Thank you. I will also put in the record a number of items in support of what you're doing. One of a whole lot of names. I won't rate them all. I noticed ranging from former ambassador to the United Nations to Barry Goldwater Jr. to John Whitehead, the president of Rutherford Institute, and so forth. That will be placed in the record in support of what you're doing. I would also place in the record a letter from a number of people, including former Commandant of the Marine Corps and others, military people, in support of what you are doing. I will put into the record a group from including Bob Barr, David Keene, the chairman of the American Conservative Union, Grover Norquist, and others in support of what you are doing, and a letter from a number of the families of those who were killed in 9/11 in support of what you're doing, and I'll place that in the record also. Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, last January, I was pleased by your commitment to close the detention center at Guantanamo Bay. For too long, it's tarnished our image around the world and complicated our efforts to combat terrorism. Although you faced greater than expected hurdles, you've made significant progress in closing the facility. Nevertheless, I'm disappointed that this morning President Obama said that we would not meet his goal of closing Guantanamo Bay by January 22, 2010. I'd like to get an update on where you are in this process. Currently, 215 detainees remain at Guantanamo. Administration officials have said that 40 to 50 will be transferred to the United States to face prosecution in federal courts or military tribunals, and about 100 will be transferred to other countries. What is your timeline for accomplishing these goals? What will you do with the remaining detainees? And when do you think that we will meet our goal of closing Guantanamo?
Yes, the President did announce today that we will not be able to meet that deadline. We had unexpected difficulties in trying to reach that goal. We have made tremendous progress in closing Guantanamo. We have more than 100 detainees who have been approved for transfer. 25 have been transferred overseas to date. More than 40 detainees have been referred for prosecution, and we will be making additional forum decisions on the remaining detainees in the near future. The decisions for the remaining detainees are still pending approval, but we expect to have decisions for all detainees well before even the January 22nd deadline. It'll then be a question of trying to, among other things, determine where those people who have been approved for transfer can be placed. I think that is going to be our biggest problem in ultimately closing Guantanamo.
Do you have some idea of when that may finally arrive at its conclusion?
Well, I looked at, or I saw a report, I guess, on what the President indicated during his remarks, and I think what he says was that sometime this year we ought to be able to do that.
Wisconsin lost 2 brave service members during the shooting rampage at Fort Hood. It is a tragedy that while preparing to defend us from threats around the world, that these brave soldiers face danger here at home. As you know, Major Hassan came to the attention of the FBI last December because of emails that he had written to a known terrorist suspect. But the FBI did not pursue an investigation of him because they concluded that the emails were consistent with his research at Walter Reed, and no contact was made with the Department of Defense. I understand that a thorough investigation will take time to complete, but we need to protect our troops now, as I'm sure you would agree. Going forward now, what changes have you made or will you make to prevent something like this from happening again?
Well, I think what we have to do is understand exactly what happened that led to that tragedy. Were there flags that were missed? Were there miscommunications, or was there a lack of communication? And once we have a handle on that, I think that we can propose and work with this committee on ways in which we can prevent such a tragedy from occurring again. We are at close to the beginning stages of this inquiry, and I think we have to determine on the basis of a sound investigation exactly what happened. I will say that on the basis of what I know so far, it is disturbing to know that there was this interaction between Hassan and other people. That is, I find disturbing.
But you do recognize, I'm sure, that there is an urgency about that mission to arrive at some decisions with respect to better protecting our troops?
Yeah, there is certainly urgency, and the President has given us, I guess, another 2 weeks or so, I think, until the end of November to come up with some findings, some determinations. And so I think that's an indication of how serious we take this and how quickly we want to try to get to the bottom of it.
Thank you. Mr. Holder, last week you announced that the Department will bring the Guantanamo detainees accused of planning the 9/11 attacks to trial in federal court in New York, as we've talked about this morning. On Friday, you said that you'd not have authorized prosecution if you were not confident that the outcome would be successful. However, many critics have offered their own predictions about how such a trial might well play out. One concern we have heard from critics of your decision is that the defendants could get off on legal technicalities, in which case these terrorists would walk free. Does this scenario have any merit? If not, why? And in the worst-case scenario, that the trial does not result in a conviction, what would be your next steps?
Many of those who have criticized the decision, and not all, but many of those who have criticized the decision have done so, I think, from a position of ignorance. They have not had access to the materials that I have had access to. They've not had a chance to look at the facts, look at the applicable laws, and make the determination as to what our chances of success are. I would not have put these cases in Article III courts if I did not think our chances of success were not good. In fact, if I didn't think our chances of success were enhanced by bringing the cases there. My expectation is that these capable prosecutors from the Justice Department will be successful in the prosecution of these cases.
But taking into account that you never know what happens when you walk into a court of law, in the event that for whatever reason they do not get convicted, what would be your next step? I'm sure you must have talked about it.
What I told the prosecutors and what I will tell you in what I spoke to them about is that failure is not an option. Failure is not an option. These are cases that have to be won. I don't expect that we will have a contrary result.
Well, that's an interesting point of view. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.